Oh my God, I'm so happy it worked. Whew.
I know. It's like I do a little silent like every
It
time I do
means
this. Like, please.
you gave great instructions. So good job. And thank you.
For the record, y'all, what I told Juliana was something on the bottom of the screen when you
Yeah.
join will say request to join live. So she's being generous with that compliment.
You deserve the reinforcement.
Oh,
Hi,
can y'all hear
Odie.
us? Can someone give a thumbs up just to make sure? Anyone?
That's crickets, I think.
Crickets, maybe. Anyone? Can you hear us? Otis is pawing me.
He's like, Mom, why are you? Yay, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so I am super excited about
So excited.
this live. This is a really fun topic. We're going to try to speak in human terms.
That's where you come in.
The dog trainer terms too. So what we're going to try to do here, I'm going to give you a quick intro of what this live is going to be. Then Juliana is going to introduce herself. We're going to do a tiny bit of like context background, not a lot. And then we're going to, live on the edge and do a live demo with dogs who, so we'll see how that goes. But so first, I want to just say I'm Christy. I'm one of the people that started TOC. Jess is in her home since we're social distancing. And super excited to be here with Juliana. She is a trainer who I love. I happen to know personally because she lives in the area. And we are talking about one of her favorite subjects. The dog trainer speak version of this is a cue transfer. It'll make a lot of people go snore when they hear it. So we're going to try to talk about it in human terms. This became a big love of mine when I realized that Sully was going nuts at my front door with noises out there. So I started using what we're going to talk about in this live to basically get her to automatically, without my intervention, she hears the vacuum outside and she now runs herself to bed. I don't have to say anything anymore. And it is delightful and it feels like magic. So that's what we're going to talk about. You can use it in a million different ways. Juliana, will you quickly just introduce yourself?
Sure. So 2 minutes in, and we already used the word cue transfer. We still have 50 people, so that's great. I'm just glad you're the first one who said it, not me, because
I thought that would be kind of me.
go
For the
straight
record,
there.
I almost didn't use it at all in the article that I will link after this. So
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Christy. It is so awesome to be here. Like Christy mentioned, I'm a trainer in the Washington, D.C. area. And I've been doing training full-time for going on 5 years now, and part-time further than that. So about 6 or 7 years training. And I absolutely love it. I have the privilege of going into people's homes and helping them with everything from basic manners, which this concept of today applies to, and with reactivity, fear issues, aggression, that type of thing, which this concept also applies to. It works across the board, and it's totally my favorite thing. I think I fell in love with it in the last couple of years because I started to become I think, a more efficient trainer. And this concept, right, is all about efficiency, where we're taking ourselves out of the equation, and it is so cool to watch. It makes your life so much easier. I'm a really quiet trainer. I don't like nagging my dogs. I don't like having to say a whole lot. And so this concept, when I started to implement it with people, with my clients and their dogs, I was like, this is the best thing ever. So I was thrilled when you decided to talk about this.
Yes, but she was like, but what are we going to do about the terminology?
Oh,
like, we lose people with, like, we'll come up with a better terminology. So
totally.
Before, just to make sure that we're a tiny bit on the same page here, can you quickly just say because you'll hear us sometimes talk about a cue. We'll likely be talking about environmental cues and things like that. But what does a cue mean to you? So when we say cue, y'all, it's C-U-E.
Right. So a cue is kind of not the new word, but the word we're using now instead of command, because a cue is any information for our dogs that the opportunity for reinforcement if they do the behavior. So a cue can be a verbal cue, sit. A cue can be a hand signal. A lot of people do this for sit, down. A cue can be in the environment, like you mentioned. Like a cue is even us putting our shoes on, preparing to walk out the door, that's a cue to our dog that we're leaving.
Yeah.
A lot of dogs will then, do their leaving routine. Like some will run to their crate if they know they have to go to their crate, so cue is anything that the dog perceives, which is important because it might not be what we think it is. It's whatever the dog perceives as the invitation to do behavior and get reinforcement.
Love it. Okay, so y'all, it's basically just anything can be a cue is basically what she's saying. So let's be clear about that.
Yeah.
It is not as limited as I might have thought before. We're like, you'll start to see there. I am now planning all the things that I want my dog to be able to interpret. So now that we kind of understand that basically our dogs can be getting information from all these different areas, from us, from the environment around them, we can talk a little bit about the term cue transfer. We're going to try to talk about it in human speak. I love to think about it as my role being I'm going to translate for the environment for a little bit. But Juliana, I'm curious if you'd be willing to explain a little bit about what this actually is when we talk about cue transfer.
Totally. So it's basically there's a new cue which the dog perceives in the environment. It's usually not something that we do. It's going to be something that exists in your dog's world. And then we give an old cue that your dog knows traditionally. It could be anything from the verbal word sit or come, inviting your dog over to you. It's whatever cue that you've taught your dog to know. And then they do the behavior attached to that cue, right? And so cue transfer, the reason that transfers in there is because we're transferring what we would typically say and how we would intervene. We're transferring that to the new cue, which is that piece to the environment that we want our dog to say, okay, the dishwasher's opening. That must mean that I'm going to be told to go lie down. So why don't I go lie down right now?
Just
seeing the dishwasher open. Exactly.
Yes.
And so, yes, the middleman, us, the translator, we do some translating, we do some training to really get that translation to dig in. And then we step out of the equation and hope that the chain continues and picks itself up and the dog understands.
Y'all, so this is something that didn't totally make sense to me when I first heard it. So I wrote this in the article. If Juliana will humor me, I'm going to give you a very simple example that I'm sure y'all can relate to. It's in a human context, in an office setting. So like imagine you're at your new job, right? You sit down and you're sitting next to your colleague, Sarah. Okay, you've got your laptop open. Your new boss, you don't know, Johnny, walks in the door. Sarah looks over at you, she's your colleague, and says, close your computer, right? What do? You simply close your computer, right? Sarah, who's been there for a while, knows that Johnny doesn't like people to be on their computer. So she tells you what to do in a term that you already know by verbally saying, close your computer. The next time you're in a meeting, when Johnny walks in the door, Sarah doesn't have to translate for you. You just automatically close your computer because Johnny walking into the room has become your environmental cue for the behavior of closing your laptop. Sarah translated for you, you're human, so you picked this up faster, but like translated for you what the environmental cue meant, and it meant to shut your laptop. It worked. You got reinforced for it because you were told good job, or you at least weren't told bad job. But yeah, so it's basically with cue transfer, we get to play the role of our colleague Sarah, and we get to help tell our dog, when the dishwasher opens, this is what it actually means. It means go to your bed. And you won't have to play translator for all that long. Can you see how pushy he's being? He went on a walk, and so I couldn't feed him his dinner because he would have puked it up on this live.
Oh, no.
He's a little extra hungry because he can't, if he's panting, he can't eat his food without making it all show up again. Okay, so before we jump into doing a demo, just so that people aren't limited to just the scenarios they'll see here, can you talk a little bit about some of the ways you've seen people use cue transfer?
Yeah, so cue transfer can actually be really empowering because you can use something that is currently triggering your dog to do something you don't like, and you can use that to your advantage and teach them that in the presence of that stimulus, whatever they perceive, it's a sound, it's a sight, the sight of something, it's you doing something, to actually do a different behavior instead. And I think it's really important to remind folks that the end behavior that we want our dog to do, even if it's just sitting, that has to be a really strong behavior. And that's a big piece to this. So that we want it to be what I call the $50 behavior, that you would bet $50 at the first time your dog asked, outside of this distracting environment with this new cue, that your dog would be successful at it. Because if it's a wishy-washy behavior and your dog, maybe we are dealing with a cue that does involve some reactivity and there's some fear going on or some excitement going on, and that type part of their brain is taking over, and the behavior we want them to do is a little bit weaker than we would want, then they're not going to be able to pull it out super fast. And I know we're going to talk about troubleshooting and what to do if our dog can't do the behavior when they are triggered by this, what we want to be the new cue. Again, so say like barking, I mean, I'm knocking, knocking on the door, barking on the door, not knocking on the door, and making sure that whatever behavior we want after that is just so strong outside of the presence of the distraction.
That is an excellent point. We'll see how strong my old cue is with Otis today.
We'll see, you know, and then hopefully we'll talk all about how to create these training scenarios so that you're not necessarily just left up to what the environment gives you. Hopefully we can talk about creative ways to create training so that your dog does get really good at this.
Yes, because I left it up to just the environment with Sully. And let's be clear, this is so strong, it still worked.
Right.
It just took longer than, in the article I'll link to, I demoed this with Otis with a dishwasher and having him lay down. And that transferred, it's not totally fast, but it transferred in a single session.
Right, pretty quickly. Yeah,
because that was not Sully's terrified of the vacuum out in the hall, so we had reactivity involved too.
Right, which we can talk about,
Yes, so before we dive into this, I feel like maybe I will quickly give one of my brain things that helps me with this, because despite knowing what cue transfer is, I could never remember the precise formula. So in my head, I kid you not, I always say knob.
Yeah.
Like new cue, old cue, behavior, because that order matters. And I, for the life of me, cannot remember which one comes first. So
I think that's so helpful. Knob, knob. That's all we can think about.
I can remember that.
Old cue, behavior.
Yep. So we are going to, let's see, is there anything else before we jump into it? Did you want to demo just an example with Sully before we try to teach Otis one? We talked about showing that this happens all the time anyway without us meaning to.
Yes, because she has, with the food bowl.
I can't get her to do the vacuum one because.
No, of course. Yes, it's absolutely. If she has one already, what I think would be really cool is maybe why don't we do that after? We'll teach Otis first, and then we'll do that after, and then we'll see if the audience can pick out what the new cue is and then what the behavior is that's attached to that.
Okay,
so they can see if they can see where the transfer happened. All
right, perfect. So what I think we were going to do as an example is, and this is actually useful for me, right? Otis's typical behavior, he hears a knock on the door and he charges the door.
Right.
Charges. Not super helpful for me or anyone who's at the door. So what we would like to have happen, or what I would like to have happen, he hears a knock on the door, he goes to his bed.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you can help us with where we would start. I have the bed out. I can back the camera up. Do I have to be? I don't have to knock on the door physically to do this.
So that's a really good point. So this is going to be an example where we are working with a little bit of reactivity. So we want to see how we can make it a little bit easier for Otis. So doing a full-blown knock on the door, he's probably not going to be super successful initially. So maybe we just do a quick knock on the wall, and maybe we don't do it as loud as we would if it was a traditional knock on the front door.
Okay. Ben, hold on, let me get, hey, Ben, Earth to Ben, Ben.
Do you need him to
get Sully? Can you get Sully? He's had his headphones in. Oh gosh. All right. I'm backing this up, y'all.
At least you didn't have to throw something at him.
No, I was toying with doing that. All right, I'm gonna.
Okay, so yeah, it would be helpful if we could see like where you are, and you're obviously gonna have to stand near a wall. And yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Yeah, perfect. We like to be a little bit inconspicuous though, so that in terms of where we knock, so maybe like knocking behind you, just so that he's not, because eventually we do want to translate it to the front door. So if he sees you knock, that can sometimes be kind of a tip off that like, oh, we're just playing this game. It's not the same thing as the front door.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, so in the sequence of new cue, old cue behavior, you are going to knock. You're going to take a brief pause. You're going to use your old cue. So what is your cue for going to bed?
I'm going to tell him here, I'm going to say place, and I'm going to point.
Okay, so you're going to knock, brief pause, say place, and then once he goes there, reward.
And since he's on it, I'm going to reset him first and then knock?
Yep, exactly. We want him up and off. Good.
Oops, he's going to have to find it now.
And it's really important that he perceives the knock so that he perceives that cue. And then that good.
Yes.
Great.
You see him look at the door? He definitely thought it was a...
Totally. So that was the perfect... Yeah, look, see, he's a little... He says, surely there's somebody here. If you need to feed him a little bit to calm him down, that's okay too.
All right, Otis, go get it. I should go quieter. Whoops, he beat me. What do I do there?
Right. So you might want to just reset him again and be ready to knock while he's off the bed.
Please.
Good. And you might even move the bed closer to the couch and then toss the treat closer to the door so that, or there, just so that he's very clearly away from the bed. So he has to make that choice to go to the place. He's not kind of just happening to end up there.
Okay.
Yeah, great. Very good. Nice. Yeah, you can go ahead and knock.
Place.
Nice.
Good job.
So again, Christy here is doing the new cue, old cue behavior.
Place.
We're still seeing some concern, but that's okay. Good.
Go get it.
Good.
Sorry,
you're going to do it 2 more times, and then we're going to start to see if we can put a little bit of a gap.
Place.
Good.
I'm probably melding my 2 cues. I can already tell.
Right. And so that's what maybe think really consciously about putting a little pause between that.
Place.
Good. He was on his way there. That was
good. Good job, bud. Oh.
Yeah, go ahead. Oh,
Place.
bud. Good. Good. Yeah, so maybe a lighter knock next time.
Okay. Go get it.
Very good.
Place. You're hearing Sully.
Good job. Yep. Get him over there as quickly as you can. Very good.
Good job.
Why don't you take a second to feed him on his bed and help him calm down, get those arousal levels down? Because we want to make sure he's in a place to learn and not too worked up about the door. And what we can do is after this, we can just take a second to talk about how you would help your dog if they are big barkers at the door before you practice the cue transfer.
What if I move slightly so I'm less
near the door? That actually is a really good idea. Maybe we just totally change the context so he's less likely to associate it with the door. I think that's a great idea.
Because I actually didn't think he'd react quite that much to it, but he is. So let me try right here. I'll move the camera too.
And this is a really good lesson in, okay, the plan that we had, our dog is not reacting the way we wanted. So maybe we can, so let's shift it and kind of switch gears a little bit and see how we can set our dog up for success. It's so important that we always have a plan where our dog is likely to be successful. Very good. All right. So yeah, you can get him off the bed with a reset. Good. Go ahead and knock. Good. That's okay. Good.
Maybe you can just take Sully outside.
Sorry, Ben. Thank you.
Because Sully, you're seeing the reactivity challenge I have that.
Right.
Sully sets
Otis
him
off.
off a little bit.
Yeah, it's very common.
Hang on, Tessa. Oh my goodness, guys. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Good. Yeah, just help everybody calm down. So we had a question here about what is the new cue and what is the old cue. So while Odie is getting nice and calmed down, ready to learn again, for this particular exercise, the new cue is the knock on the door because Otis knows place. That's his old cue that you use all the time. Old cue, go to your place. That's the old cue. And we want to change going to his place to now, we want him to do that when he hears the new cue, which is the barking. New cue, old cue behavior, knob.
Good job. Okay. They should be out now. So
how do we feel?
Should be able to.
Perfect.
Let's see if this goes a tiny bit better this way.
Good.
Oh, okay, they're back. They're almost gone. Okay, now they're gone. All right. Place.
Good. Good.
Good job, buddy. Good job.
And so we changed the context. We talked about kind of advancing, but we changed the context. So we're going to do that sequence a few more times.
Good job. Get it?
Good.
Place. Good. All the way down. That's okay. That's a good start. Go get it. Place.
Good.
Good job. You can get it.
Go ahead and add a brief pause now between new cue and old cue.
Place.
Good. Great. Very good. We'll do that a few more times. That was really good timing.
Place.
Good.
He's at least not barking.
Yeah, definitely. He's getting a little huffy. So there's still some concern and reactivity there, which is totally fine. This is a good way to change that emotional response.
Good boy.
Great.
Get it?
Woo!
Oh, good job, buddy! Good job!
Very nice. So there, you didn't cue place at all, right?
Nope.
Okay, great. So that was the perfect example of Otis is starting to put together. I hear the knock. Wow, she's probably going to tell me to go to my place. Beautiful. Lovely. Look at that. So Christy is no longer having to cue place. Now, that doesn't mean that this cue is fully transferred. It just means he's starting to put it together and we can start to build it. Beautiful. Wonderful job, Christy. Good job. Are you clicking when he steps on the bed or when he lays down was a question?
Depends. I'm trying for lay down, but if he seems too worked up, I will do it when he's simply on, and I will place the reward low so that he knows I want him low.
Yeah, really, really good job. And that's exactly what I would choose to do. So you're changing the criteria depending on how difficult it is. Look at this smarty. Okay, so Otis is fully figuring out the game that, oh, when she knocks, she's going to cue me to go to place, so I might as well just go there anyway.
Good boy!
Very nice.
Okay, so what would the next, I don't know that I can get to the next steps, but curious, I'll give him a break, what you would do from here.
So we want to get to it looking like real life. That's our end goal. And I would say as quickly as possible, but we also don't want to rush it. We want to go at our dog's pace. So what I would recommend for this particular setup is we know he had trouble when the knock came closer to the door. So I would put your bed probably where you want it to end up, right? Where if you don't want to have a bed sitting in the middle of the room, then maybe start working the bed back to where you want it and practice sending him to place there. And then slowly over time work to get your knock closer to the front door.
Ah.
So you've got kind of.
So I could keep my knock away from the door first. while
Right.
I'm moving this.
The bed. Yep.
Okay, hold on. Do you think I can do this right now, or do you think that's too?
Sure.
All right. Let's give this a shot.
Yeah, let's do it. So it's really, dogs are very context learners, meaning Otis learning knocking meant go to his bed in the context of that exact setup where you were standing, where the bed was. That's where he learned it. That doesn't necessarily mean he would understand it in a totally different context if the bed was somewhere else. Good.
Place. Should I be giving more of a pause right now? I went back to my immediate association.
Right. So you backed up, which was awesome. And I think we can go ahead and add the pause, because I have a feeling he's not gonna, I think he probably would know it pretty quickly in this context. I think you refreshed it a little bit, and now you can go ahead and take a pause and see if he responds without you cueing.
Get it? Oh my gosh.
Good. And wait. All right, give him a little hint.
Face.
Good. Very good.
Get all the way on here.
How is his place at a distance typically? Like if you're standing far away from the bed, how is his response to that usually? Do you usually have to walk over to it, or how is that?
I don't usually send from that far away. If he just got up, if I put him in a place and he got up from it and I said place again from a distance, he'd know from context.
Yeah.
I probably should have a stronger sound.
Right. So that's my guess, is that he's slower to pick it up because he doesn't have a lot of practice going to his place from this far away. Good. Great. So maybe you even you stand near the window and knock on the wall there instead of the back of the desk. Yeah.
Okay.
It's just a way to meet him in the middle kind of and say, okay, you're having a hard time with it here. Let me try here instead.
Thanks.
Great.
So you want me up on the windowsill?
Right.
Place.
Maybe do it with your, I don't know if this is flipped, but your not treat pouch hand, and kind of do it behind you so that he's not seeing your hand knock. There you go. Great.
Y'all are seeing how uncoordinated.
No, you're doing great.
I'm learning to teach something new.
Good. And I would wait a second or two longer next time. We'll see. Let's just see.
Oh, yeah.
Whoa, splat.
I know.
Good. And wait. Let's let him think for a second. All right. Give a little hint. Oh, yeah, give him a little hint.
Thanks.
Good. Great.
Yes.
He thought about it, and he was slow to pick the right answer, which is just data to us that he doesn't know yet what the right answer is, and so we want to help him. We don't ever really want to let him flounder or try to figure it out himself, because if he's such a smart guy and if he understood it, he would try it. There we go.
Good job.
Very good.
Yeah, I'm always shocked at how big of a difference it makes when the picture looks different.
Yeah, totally. Dogs are so context specific. Yep, wait him out. Great.
Yes.
Very
Good
nice.
Boy. Good job. Go get it.
He said, "Oh, that's another cue transfer too." He was done and he hopped up before hearing go get it.
Yes.
Nice.
So that's looking much better now.
Yeah, totally. Right. And it's like, oh, the light finally went off. It clicked for him. Right. And until then it wasn't clicking.
Yes.
So we have a question. Do you say place if he goes there after the new cue? So we're actually working to remove and to not have to say place, which is the whole goal. And they're actually really accomplishing that quite well. The new cue, the knock, is now replacing place altogether. We're just going to wait. Very good. Yes. Very nice.
Always a test of my patience. Can I?
Totally.
Waiting.
Right. So a fun way, Christy, to test how this cue is working too is have him cue him to sit in front of you, because we're going to change the picture again a little bit.
Uh-huh.
And if you cue him to sit and reward him for that, and then knock when he's sitting in front of you, if he goes to goes to his place, then we know he really knows it. Good. Now go ahead and knock.
Confuse him.
And wait. Let's see what he does. He's thinking about it. Let's see. Good. Yeah.
Yes. Good boy. Good job.
It's a way of changing the picture.
Sit.
Good. Yeah, let's swing him out. Hill. Oh, good.
Yes. And I think it's like, I like knowing that, you know, if he doesn't get it in that window when I pause, it's fine. I'll just give him the cue he knows.
Totally.
Which, like, it isn't a failure. It's just like, okay, so you just still need me to translate for you.
It's data to us. It's to us, our dog's telling us, right, I don't quite understand this yet. Let's see. Good.
I didn't give much pause there because I saw.
Totally fine.
Good job.
And actually, this time, instead of a sit cue, why don't you ask him to touch with one of your free hands to keep him moving instead of getting him to sit down. Nice. Good. Yes. There we go.
I'm marking for just putting his paws on.
Yeah. Great.
For that one. Ready? Touch. Oops, you choke. Touch. Oh, you confused place.
Good job.
Yes. Good boy. Good boy. Ready? Touch. Please. I think this hand is throwing him.
Right. And would you want to hide that behind? Is that doing the knocking?
That was doing the knocking, but I'm doing it in a like touch and then knocking here,
totally.
And it's sending him to this hand.
Yeah.
Which is not exactly what I want. Ready, Otis? Touch.
And then wait him out. Give him a second to think. Let's see. I don't want him to flounder, but he's still working for us. Good. So we had a question about kind of the proximity of the bed to from where the trigger happens. And like a lot of dogs will run to the front door. Yeah, you can give him a little break. And I think it's so important outside of cue transfer to practice sending your dog to their place or their bed from a distance. So kind of like no matter where you are in the room, we want them to be able to go to their place. And that just takes little baby steps away from the bed, and during each practice session, getting a little further and further away. But that's a huge piece to it.
To me, that is probably that is probably a piece of data for me that is missing, is that behavior is not as strong as I probably thought it was.
Right.
Can you lay down for a second and chill? Thank you.
Doesn't matter. It's always working.
So would you, in that scenario, would I probably, if I were like game planning how to do this, separate this a little bit from separate the sending to the bed from the cue transfer work and just get a solid send to his bed from anywhere, so that like that's a very clear behavior, and then come back to
putting the cues together. Absolutely. Okay. I think, and it goes back to that $50 behavior, right? Now, it also is a little bit of personal preference. Like if you don't mind, wherever you are in the room, getting up and walking next to his bed and pointing to it when he starts barking, then you don't necessarily have to worry as much about that distance. So it kind of, like for me though, if I have a dog that knows place, I like to be able to be sitting on the couch and tell them to go to place and they run over. So, but that takes a lot of extra work. So some people are fine, getting up from the couch and walking over and pointing to it. So but just keep in mind that in that scenario, standing next to the bed and pointing to it is the cue versus in a scenario somewhere else where just the word or just place, go to your bed, whatever is the cue.
Right, which I probably need it because place is a generic cue for him to like whatever is near him versus he probably needs it won't be hard. I will just transfer what this bed is, do a Q transfer.
Yeah, there you go, right?
This bed is, I will name it something for him, but it is, since you hit on it, like, I'm curious about your thoughts on this, since this is what I had to do with Sully. Like, Sully does not have a send behavior.
Right.
So y'all, just so you know this scenario, because this might be I don't know, y'all could weigh in on, while we give Otis a break, weigh in on some of the scenarios you have too. But Sully would hear the caretaker in our apartment building vacuum in the hall every single day, which is so kind of him. But it was the bane of Sully's existence. And she would go nuts for 5 minutes straight. Like, it was bad. And she's not reactive to my vacuum. So, like, it was a lot harder for me. I was like, I'm struggling with what to do here. So what I simply started doing was, I had to start with taking a treat in front of her nose the moment I noticed her with a vacuum, like a stinky high value treat, luring her away, because I first had to get her attention, and then cueing place and walking over to her cot. And then it rained treats the whole time she heard the vacuum, but I only got that one shot each day.
Mm-hmm. Right. So your progress, if you're working with something you don't have control over, is obviously going to be much slower. And it's so important. What you did was exactly the right thing, where you interrupted the behavior as quickly as you could. And you used a lot of food around the behavior, which ultimately meant, and this is getting into a reactivity piece, but you started to change her association with it, which basically was like, grr, the mean, scary vacuum. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, this vacuum predicts food for me. And then you took it a step further and said, not only does it predict food, so you don't have to be as scared and worried about it and as loud about it, but also in the presence of it, I'm going to ask you to do this other thing, which also predicts a ton of food. So, again, getting into the reactivity a little bit, sometimes we have to address that emotional response, that conditioned response to the stimulus or to the trigger, before then asking for a behavior in the presence of it.
Right. Yeah, it was, I swear it just clicked one day. All of a sudden, I went over to check on her and she was already heading to her bed. I was like, what just happened?
Right. And in general, consistency is really important with this, right? Like, if the vacuum happens every day and we only practice once or twice a week, then she's still, not only are you going to have slow progress with the behavior you want, but she's practicing that undesirable behavior so much. So you're just making your job a lot harder. You're really working in an uphill battle to try to change that.
Yes. There were also times where, like, I just didn't have time to, like, handle it appropriately, and I knew the vacuum would come in the afternoon, so I would just put her away in the bedroom and turn music on, and, like, today's not going to be a day we do a Q transfer.
Great management, you just got to take each day as it comes. And it's like, training today? Nope, sure is. Today's a management day, which is great.
Yes, exactly. I'm curious what some of the questions are.
So we just had a really good question that said, would you wait for a dog's, which I think basically was, would you wait for a dog's emotional response to improve before then working on the Q transfer? And typically, I would say yes, but you and Sully are a really good example of how you did both at the same time and you saw progress pretty quickly. So I think also Q transfer can actually be a really good way to make your dog like a scary trigger more, because, it predicts this sit cue, which I know really well and I know always predicts food for me. So if the scary thing predicts things that they love, then that's a really great way for them to not be so scary anymore. And then the behavior attached to being scared, barking, growling, rushing the door, starts to go away. And you can replace that behavior with what you want instead.
And I'm curious, because I'm seeing some of these questions. Like, I am Sully choosing to leave the door on her own is only recent. So, like, I can't actually speak enough to what, like, she's still not perfect.
How many months or how long do you feel like you interrupted with food and sent her? Like, I'd be curious.
Like, every day for a month.
Okay. It's pretty good.
Oh, goodness. He is a little extra jumpy today because
Yay,
a bike, which bikes are not usually a trigger for him anymore, but came down a surprise hill, screeched to a halt.
Ooh.
So like he lost it in a way roughly 10 minutes before the live.
Good.
Like big time reaction.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I was like, well, this is going to be fun for me because now he's got a massive amount of chemicals floating around in his body. But it's okay. This is the dog I live with.
It's like we're working with live animals or something. Totally.
Yeah, this is the dog I live with. How do they know the treats are for the good behavior and not the bad one? Ooh, Juliana.
This is a really, really good question that we get a lot. So I've already talked a lot about the reason. And again, sorry, we're kind of talking about reactivity, which I know everybody wants to hear about. Gwen did an amazing live about that already. So, you know, she's really the reactivity girl. But reactivity and barking and lunging at stuff is a product of typically fear and anxiety and just being really terrified at that vacuum outside or that person knocking on the door. And so we want to get them feeling better as quickly as possible, because you can't, adding a treat to fear is not going to make them more scared next time, which means that the barking and lunging is not going to be worse next time. In fact, you're going to actually see that behavior decrease because they are now feeling much better in the presence of the trigger next time. So interrupting the behavior is usually my top priority, and food's usually one of the only ways to do that. And you would know if you had a dog who's been rewarded for the quote unquote bad behavior if they looked at the door, barked, and then looked at you for food, which if that's happening, then you actually have a lot of workability for other behaviors, some really good cue transfer. So you do not have to worry about that, but good job. Good.
I'm also working with too hungry of a dog. Otis is
Does Otis like food?
Y'all, it's a special level of, like, I almost never feed him on a purely empty stomach because he gets like frantic, but he just blew up before the live and we went on a walk, so he was like panting and he just regurgitates if he eats. So it's like crap. This is like all the not great scenarios for.
It's okay. It's good. You know, and it's so important. Like, we wake up every day and we don't know what dog we're going to get that day. We don't know what version of ourselves we're going to get that day. That's so important to remember. So,
oh yes, I have had to learn. This dog has taught me to pay attention to who is in front of me, and that changes day after day. But I was going to say too, in case it helps anyone, with Sully at the door with the vacuum. What I saw happen with her behavior, at first, I couldn't speak to her if she was at that door barking. So I had to stick a stinky treat in front of her. And it had to be like the highest value treat too, not just, oh, hello, Otis.
Hi,
and then suddenly I was able to redirect her with just my voice, right? I could get her attention away from that door to start following me over to her cot without me having to actually stick a treat in front of her. And then slowly what's been happening is she'd go to the door, bark for a second, and then walk herself to her cot. What happened today was she went to the door, inspected it, smelled it, did a low grumble, but did not do a full bark, and then walked herself to her cot. So like, it's been I do actually think too that there's a lot of desensitization that happens, because then once she's on the cot, it's raining treats the whole time she's hearing it. But it's been like a very slow and steady progression. Nothing. I mean, it's okay. It's okay.
Do you want to is Sully back, or is she still outside?
She's still outside.
Okay. Because I would love to either talk about or show other examples of cue transfers so that people can really start to wrap their head around this, and especially other scenarios that aren't reactivity related, that are just kind of like nuisance related. So like one example, and this is in that amazing article that you wrote, is so if you have a dog who always goes for the dishwasher, and we can have that dishwasher be information for your dog, don't come over here, go over there instead, because when that dishwasher comes out, I'm going to cue you to go to your bed or go to your crate or whatever, and you're going to get good stuff when you do that. And so soon they start to associate, oh, dishwasher comes out, I might as well go to my bed because I know that that's going to happen. And the crazy thing is, we just do not give our dogs enough credit for how much they are taking in the environment and they are learning. They are learning every single minute of the day, whether we like it or not.
Yes.
And they're such observers, and they're constantly saying, okay, what information works for me here? What should I pay attention to? And they want to be efficient as well, because ultimately they probably want to get, and they do want to get to that food as quickly as possible. And so if the food is, it's new cue, old cue, and then the behavior gets them the food, they're going to figure out, how do I go from that new cue to that food as quickly as possible? Right.
Yes. Jess, if you want to text Ben, I don't know if you can hear me from one of your phones, you can tell him to come back in. My phone is live, so I can't really text him.
That's okay. And another example, so I know you know somebody who has a great example with like laundry time.
Yes.
So the laundry, the current behavior, it's the dog goes crazy, grabs toys, socks, they think it's toys, socks, stuff like that. And every time we do the laundry, we say, lie nicely on your bed for a treat, please. Well, guess what? The context of going and getting the laundry basket or walking to the laundry room has now become a cue for them to go lie in their bed. Us, the translator, the middleman, we've been taken out of the equation because they are efficient learners. And the dog has learned, okay, laundry, that means I'm going to be told to go to my bed. That means I'm going to get a treat. Why don't I go to my bed as soon as I see the laundry happening? Because that's the quickest way to get to the food.
Does that make sense to y'all? Because like that is, I think once I started to pay more attention to just how many associations these dogs were making without me even meaning to make them, it's like, okay, but what if I was intentional?
Right. Totally.
How, like, just simply, even if you weren't trying to set like a really focused training session, right? You could still probably make some serious progress with the laundry room as long as you walked in there prepared, right?
Right.
Not as fast as an actual training session, but.
Right. And it's about having a plan and thinking, okay, what do I want my new cue to be? And what's my old cue? Is my old cue strong enough? Does this make sense? And another important thing too is making sure that that old cue and the behavior is incompatible to what they're currently doing or what you don't like what they're doing. And so, really brainstorming and just putting a couple minutes of thought into it. And then of course, the more training sessions you can do, the better. But even 5 minutes a day, like, you guys with your 5 minutes, like you can get so many repetitions in 5 minutes and you can accomplish so much. If you do that a couple times a week, like suddenly you have a dog, they see the dishwasher open, they run to their crate, they say the leash come out. This is another one. Like instead of, for right now, a lot of dogs, the leash comes out and they go crazy. But if the leash comes out and we tell them to sit and they get a treat for sitting after the leash comes out, then guess what? The leash can now become a cue to go sit nicely and wait for me.
I love that.
So it's just thinking, what are things in your environment that cause behaviors that you'd rather be different? The opportunities are literally endless because anything could be a cue, as we already talked about.
Yes. And at some point we'll have to do another one of these with Juliana with the myriad of things you can do outside as cues that are crazy helpful. And it's like literally just about being consistent with it. But Juliana, if you're open to it, maybe people could drop some scenarios that they're curious about in here, we could group brains.
Oh my God, please. That would be great.
I don't know if any of y'all have things that you're thinking about that you would like, either a problem you have or like an opportunity that you kind of now see after talking about this. If you want to try to workshop it with Juliana, you could try dropping it in the comments right now. Not to put you totally on the spot, but
that would be great. Cue transfer is such a good way to address unwanted behavior, because unwanted behavior always happens for a reason, and it always is cued by the environment somehow, right? There's always something that causes the dog to go, oh, I'm going to jump up on this, or I'm going to steal this, or I'm going to do something inappropriate in this moment because of this antecedent that happened. Oops, I'm going too sciencey. But
can counter surfing, could this play a role in your anti-counter surfing plan?
Oh my God, it would be great. And actually, now that I think about it,
because that is a problem.
How cool would it be if we taught Otis that when we walk into the kitchen, he should lie down behind us, right? Like, so it's, again, the problem behavior is him being in the kitchen. So what's incompatible for him being in the kitchen, being outside of the kitchen lying down, right? And what can we do to efficiently get that behavior, well, anytime we're in the kitchen, there's likely to be food in there. So how about we say, oh, you see me walking into the kitchen, I'm going to cue you to lie down nicely, watch me, and I'm going to give you a treat for that. So now every time I walk in the kitchen, you go lie down nicely and I'll make it work out for you.
Yes, that would be amazing. So somebody just dropped a comment about an outdoor one.
Yeah.
I have a feeling I know what you'll recommend for this. It is, I think what Juliana's going to say is my favorite thing in the world.
What, engage, disengage?
Yeah, well, just about
like
making
marking
the things in the environment become cues to look at me.
Totally. And this, I mean, my God, we could talk for a whole other hour on.
Or you've got delivery people are another good one.
Like,
oh, there's Ben. Oh, there's the little
Yay!
kids.
Hi, Salsa.
Hi, Sally. Hi, girl.
Yay! Yes. So outside, I'll answer this real fast because we want to make sure it cuts off before the hour, and we've got about 8 minutes left. Actually, let's just go ahead. Do you think Sully's up for showing us her cute? Let's go ahead and see if she can try it.
Okay, hold on. Back this up. Odie. Come here, Otis, can you get your big butt out of the way? Thank you, baby. Come here. Come lay down. All the way down. Thank you. All right, Cecil. Come here, little lady. Otis, I need you to stay there. Sonny, come here. Otis. You. Odie, I know. It's dinner time for you. Come here. Down. Down. All right. Stay. All right, Sonny, come here. Ready?
Okay, great. Well, you can give her reward and then we'll talk about it. Good. Okay, so this is actually one of the most common ones that that's happening with our dogs every single day in every single household that people don't even realize is a cue transfer. Because how many people pick up the dog's bowl and get ready to give it to them, and the dog does the behavior you want them to do, and you don't have to sit anymore. And I know I'm giving it away, and I said I wanted people to see if they could figure it out, but we so often, whether it's like the dog bowl is the best example, where you get ready to feed them and you hold that dog bowl up, and without you saying anything or doing anything, they plop that butt on the ground. You just did a cue transfer. And that's how often it's happening and how frequently it's happening without us even knowing, because of our crazy good learners that we have in dogs.
Yes, and sometimes their crazy good learning means they make associations that I'm like, oh crap, that
didn't mean to do that. Totally.
Shoot.
Yep. And in that scenario, so the new cue is the bowl, the old cue was cueing the verbal sit, and then the behavior was putting her butt on the ground.
Yep.
Show her
so
the
now
bowl.
She sees the food bowl of food.
Yeah. It's okay, it's late. Right. And so that's a really good example. And another way, maybe you want her not just to sit, you want her to run to her bed. And you would do the exact same sequence. Show her the bowl of food, cue her to go to her bed. Show her the bowl of food, cue her to go to her bed. And then very quickly she would say, oh, I know what's coming when I see this bowl.
And she picks up on things like that very quickly. So it would actually be helpful if, while I was preparing their dinners, they don't really bother me, but they're near my bowls. And I probably would prefer that if I pull out those bowls and put them on the floor to prepare dinner, that they go to bed.
Totally, right? And so then again, thinking about the new cue, instead of the new cue being holding the bowl full of her kibble in front of her, the new cue would be, I'm pulling the bowls out of where they live. Right. And so I want that to work for me. I want that to be the step that I no longer have to say what I want them to do after they see this happen. And so same sequence, you pull those out, you cue them to do what you want, and you reward that.
I'm curious because someone mentioned this, and delivery people coming, because they don't always, sometimes they knock, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's the knock you do is the new cue. Ben, you can feed him if you want.
So I think it's really important too, to just in the last couple minutes drive home that if there is too big of an emotional reaction happening with your dog, they can't learn in those moments. And so you're going to have a much, much, much harder time getting them to calm down and do something you want, because that involves thinking. And if they're in panic mode, they can't think. And so again, going back to what Christy did with Sully, is you interrupted and you got her eating as quickly as you could, because that turns her brain from that fight or flight mode of like, oh my God, I have to defend my house from this person knocking on the door in a uniform and this big scary truck, and I hate this so much. We have to get her to switch from that brain to, oh, okay, what do you have? You know, I'm still really upset, but like, okay, you've got something really stinky. Okay, all right, I'll think about what you want me to do here, right? And we have to transition them to that as quickly as we can. And that's where something really high value and getting in there and interrupting the behavior as quickly as we can is really, really important, because the less time she spends in that heightened fight or flight state, the faster she will react and respond to what we want. And hopefully you'll have that cue practiced enough that she says, okay, I'm really upset right now, but you're telling me to go to my place and I've practiced that enough. So, okay, I can do it, you know?
Yes. My personal homework is going to be, I'm going to create a cue that is very specific to their beds that is a send, right? I'm going to nail that down, because that is the default behavior I want, I think, for a lot of environmental cues. So like, I might as well make that a strong behavior. And then y'all watch. You're going to see a dog who at barking runs to this bed soon. Like, this is my new personal challenge.
Totally. And I would love, oh my God, I am dying to see what people come up with after this. So I really, really, really hope that they just like tag you, and the opportunities are literally endless. And I would love to see this from everything from like fun, like, you know, okay, it's dinner time and they're fine, but I want them to do something else, to like, wow, this really solved a problem for me. Like the options for this are just so, you can do it so much.
Yes, y'all, please share too, because we'll reshare whatever y'all are working on, just because it gives people ideas. Like, sometimes you see somebody do something, like I've seen some of these things where I'm like, why have I not thought to do that?
Right,
like,
totally.
That is way simpler than the way I manage this situation. And this also, like, it is, I was telling somebody, I mean, I'm sure if y'all have heard any of my stories over on Otis, I squeal when Sully runs to her bed, because it feels like magic. Like, I did nothing, and she's doing exactly what I want her to do.
Totally.
So hi, OD, hi, Sully. Yeah, you're a good girl. So I feel like we should probably wrap up, because I don't want, we're
gonna get kicked off.
Saved to the story.
Yeah.
We will try really hard to beg Juliana to come back and do some more, because the stuff you can do outside is pretty remarkable.
I think I would love to do a whole hour on that and really get people understanding, the concept outside, because that's definitely, it's taking this foundation information and then applying it in a little different, a little trickier way, but all the same concept.
It makes life so much easier outside.
Totally. Oh yeah.
All right. Well, thank all of you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you to Juliana. All right.
Yay.
Have a good night. Bye.
Yeah.